if you look at me, you would be like, oh, she's a little plus size, but I am technically considered obese.
So
If you see me, you consider me obese?
I wouldn't say that you're obese.
Sorry, but it's time for fat women on the internet to start taking accountability for once. We're going to cover a wild debate between fit and overweight women that was just published on the Jubilee Media channel in their Middle Ground series, and so much more in today's episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast, my daily show where I take on the craziest things from across the internet and across our politics, all from an independent perspective. So a few months back, the Jubilee channel published a debate featuring fit men versus overweight men that frankly was pretty unhinged.
I mean, if I was president, hell, I'd put all of them in a fat concentration camp so they can concentrate on dieting and exercising, because being fat is completely not acceptable.
Now they just released a similar debate, but featuring women, so fit women versus overweight women, and this one was much more civil, much kinder, and much easier to listen to, frankly. But there were still a lot of very bad and nonsensical ideas spread in this video, which has been viewed more than 1 million times in just 24 hours. And so I'm going to break it down with you guys today and go over some of the highlights, or I guess I should say lowlights. Continuing with our trend of, on Fridays, reacting to viral videos from the internet rather than talking about the increasingly depressing news going on in the world. Without further ado, let's take a look at this first clip where a woman explains that she doesn't really identify as obese.
Women come in all shapes and sizes, right? And every woman is beautiful. And I think that you should really be confident in your body and the way that you look, you know, wake up feeling your best. But I feel like especially on social media and in society today, this body positivity movement, I've seen like multiple times where there's like obese women promoting body positivity, and it's like I wouldn't want like my
What's
kid.
obese for you?
Like an unhealthy lifestyle.
No,
like
but
overweight.
Appearance-wise, what's obese for you?
Obese, like medically
me,
obese.
if you see me, you
What's her
consider me
range?
obese?
I wouldn't say that you're obese,
Okay.
but it's like medically,
So,
you know.
So like for
So
example,
you're medically obese, though? Yes.
I've been medically obese since I was like 12, and I was not obese.
Well, does anybody here?
So, there's a lot to unpack there in this first little bit, but first I'll just say that they're already being too nice, which is a theme throughout this video. You shouldn't be calling people ugly or being mean or negative to anybody, but you also can only entertain so much delulu before just losing the plot completely. Not every woman is beautiful or can be beautiful, although it's subjective, but if every woman is beautiful, that word doesn't really mean much. Still, we shouldn't be rude to people, men or women, and say you're ugly and go after their appearance and insult them, but we don't have to pretend that everyone is beautiful when we all know that's just not really true. And I can't believe the first woman wasn't willing to answer her question and say, yes, you are obese. Scratch that. Actually, you're not obese. You're almost certainly morbidly obese. This isn't an insult. It's not a put down. It's not an attempt to disparage you. You are still, in many ways, seem like a wonderful human being, and you have so much value and positivity to offer the world. It's not a judgment of your moral worth as a person. It's just an observation of a medical fact. If you are the weight that you clearly are, at the height that you are classified as morbidly obese. There's no subjectivity to it. It's a scale that exists and isn't perfect, but in cases like this is clearly accurate, so it's just an observable fact. You can't not identify as a fact. And this response that, well, they've said I was medically obese since I was 12 and I wasn't obese then, yes, you were, if they were telling you that, unless you're suggesting that they measured you incorrectly or something, which I'm just going to assume wasn't the case. The comments section on this video did not take kindly to this woman's approach. Obese isn't a bad word. They're acting like it's a slur. If you're obese, then you're obese. Yeah, I agree with this. Obviously, it has some stigma attached, unfortunately, but it is just an objective rating, right? It's either true or false. There's no subjectivity here. Would you consider me obese? ... People sometimes are really blind to their outer appearance. Yeah, again, no shade to these women. I don't want anyone to insult them or make fun of them in the comments at all. Be kind. However, you are in denial, and that's not what's best for you, you know, because this is going to harm your health and hurt you in the long run. And I want you to live a long, happy, beautiful life, but you are clearly morbidly obese. And just denying that fact isn't going to get us anywhere. Another person said, I think a lot of the women here are afraid to get canceled. A lot of them are definitely hesitating. Yes. And this is the exact opposite of how the debate with the men went.
Fat concentration camps.
And maybe that's just kind of more feminine energy that was present from some, although not all of the people in this debate, but they were very kind, almost to a fault. I think some of these people need harsh truths told to them in a polite and respectful and empathetic way, but one that's firm and still acknowledges the facts and the consequences of their actions. Another person writes, when you see me, do you think I'm obese? Yes. I am a person who's also medically obese, and I do believe you're obese. Just to clarify, that says nothing about who you are as a person, but merely answers the question asked. Another person writes, obesity is a medical term. It's like saying you don't have diabetes just because you feel fine. Just because you don't feel obese doesn't mean you aren't. Yeah, I mean, this is just correct. It's just, we've got to be able to talk about facts, and facts exist independent of your feelings or self-identification, as verboten as that is to say in today's society. There is a similar lack of self-awareness in the second clip we're going to go through, but first, a message from today's sponsor.
Today I'm going to show you how to use pumpkin spice pronouns and sentences, so let's go! I can realize it.
That's better. Sometimes I feel absolutely cooked at the end of a long day, wading through TikTok brain rot and more insanity from the Wi-Fi password community. One thing that helps me cope and regenerate some of my destroyed brain cells is a cup of tea from my friends over at Lion's Tea Exchange, the sponsor of today's show. Founded by my friend and fellow YouTuber Sydney Watson, this delicious tea is sourced from across the globe, from Nepal to Japan, but made in America and packaged meticulously by hand. I love the lemon ginseng tea to sip and unwind after a day of dealing with Delulu. If you too need something to bring you some peace in this increasingly insane world, go to the link on screen or in the description and check out Lion's Tea Exchange today. Plus, if you use the promo code BRAD, you can get 10% off your order. Check out Lion's Tea Exchange now. Guys, please show Sydney some support and some love. She is a dear friend. She's put so much time and effort into Lion's Tea Exchange, and I've been drinking it all week since I got my package. I actually genuinely love it. So please do go to the link in the description or the comments and check it out and show her support. It's a great way of showing that you support this show too. And please do comment with your thoughts as we go along in this episode. I do read the comments and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Plus, this episode is probably going to get demonetized and copyright claimed by Jubilee. So leave your comment with a super chat or a super thanks if you want to support the show, because probably not going to get any YouTube ad revenue, unfortunately. So it's just a labor of love today. Now, another woman that was featured in this Jubilee debate demonstrated a similar level of delulu about their own situation, shall we say.
Would anybody here explain what they mean by medically obese?
Exactly.
Like
BMI.
like when you go to the doctor's office and you get weighed on a scale, and they'll tell you, oh, you're a little bit overweight, or they'll say you're morbidly obese, you're
because of your
whatever
height.
these things. So like if you look at me, you would be like, oh, she's a little plus size, but I am technically considered obese.
So
by my doctors.
Oh my. I'm not trying to be mean, guys. She seems so sweet and so delightful, and she does mention in this video later on that she has PCOS, so it is very difficult, although not impossible, to maintain a healthy weight when you have that health condition. However, you are not a little plus size. You are objectively morbidly obese. You are very, very overweight. And it's not kind or compassionate to dance around that fact or pretend that that's not true, or just pretend that the emperor is wearing clothes when he's walking around butt naked. Because obesity-related illness is one of the leading causes of preventable deaths in the United States, right up there with smoking cigarettes and lung cancer. And people, it drastically shortens your lifespan and hurts your health to be obese at all, let alone morbidly obese. And so we should be trying to help these people. We should not be bullying them. We should not be making fun of their bodies. We should not be shaming them or stigmatizing them. But we also shouldn't be in Delulu land. We shouldn't be acting like morbidly obese people are just a little plus sized, or that if you are morbidly obese objectively, but you don't feel that way, you feel fine, that then somehow you're not obese. Oh, no. The Lulu is not a Solulu. In the comments, one person wrote, the bigger women in this video need to start taking accountability. Preach. Preach. That is one of the biggest problems I see in modern society, especially on the internet, is people unwilling to be self-critical or honest or open to feedback or accountable for their own choices in any way. And it's really toxic and harmful, not just to themselves, but I guess mostly to themselves in this case, but also to society. Another person writes, hearing all the excuses from the ladies that are bigger. That used to be me. And honestly, it's so depressing to see them use the same excuses I did. Minus 120 pounds later, my whole perspective is different. Well, Amanda, I am so proud of you, and it is possible. It's not easy. I don't pretend for a second that it is easy, but people like you make these changes and take accountability, and it's so amazing, and I hope it's an inspiration and a model to others. Now we've got to go back to Lupe, the woman from the first clip that we went over, because she's still arguing that she's not obese, even later in this video, because she doesn't feel that way.
For me, because I am a person that I'm big, but I'm, like I said, I'm still able to go on hikes and I won't lose my breath. I can go on runs, I can exercise. So if for the doctors I'm obese because of the size and the stuff that I am, for the doctors, for me, it is not the way that it works, because an obese person, I've had friends who are skinnier than me. We go on walks and they're losing their breath.
So for you, obesity is just the health parameter of how physical you can be. For you, it's not a physical manifestation of the body.
I don't know how to explain this to you, babe. Obese is not a subjective term. You don't get to decide what does obese mean to you. It's an objective medical definition based on your BMI. BMI is not perfect. It has flaws. But in cases as extreme as this woman's case, it is accurate. And it's so great that you're still able to maintain physical activity and do things, but that's not what obese is defined as. And frankly, if you maintain your current state of affairs, that may eventually decline. It is highly likely that your mobility will suffer. And the fact that some other people who are thin and frail and have other more severe health issues also are able to exercise less than you doesn't really tell us much about your health. And nobody's ever argued that obesity is the only thing that affects or influences health. So they could have something else going on. Just you're trying to make it seem like, well, I'm overweight and they're underweight and I'm able to hike better than them. Okay, well, there's many things that affect your ability to engage in physical exercise. No one's ever said it's just your weight, but yes, it's a huge part of it. And all I'm getting from this woman, from Lupe, is denial and excuses. And it's sad. It's heartbreaking because her lifespan is going to be shortened by this almost certainly. I mean, you see rare cases like the people who smoke 2 packs a day and live to 103 and never get lung cancer, right? And the same thing is true with obesity. It is just a fact, and I will link to the sources in the description of this episode, that being morbidly obese decreases your average lifespan by 14 to 20 years. I don't want that for you. I want more for you. I want you to live a beautiful, positive, long, happy, and healthy life. But the excuse making and the denial and the Delulu Olympics on display in this video aren't going to get you there. They're going to get you to an early grave. And that is a tragedy, but at least in part, it is a tragedy of your own making. Another interesting moment from the debate came when they asked the question, they made the statement and then debaters had to say whether they agree or disagree. Your physique is in your control. And I don't love this prompt because I don't think anyone really believes that it's not at all or that it's completely in your control. The truth is that it's largely in your control. Obviously, some things about your physique you can't change, but a lot you can change and influence through your choices. So I didn't love the black and white nature of the prompt, but some people basically denied that you can control it at all or almost at all, which is absurd. Take a listen.
So while of course there are aspects that I think you can control about your physique, I think there are more things that are out of your control. Like, it is so much more expensive to eat healthy than it is to eat like crap. If I go to the grocery store and I just want to buy a bunch of frozen meals, that's going to be so much cheaper than me going and buying fresh produce and fresh fruit and everything.
I'm sorry, but I just don't have a lot of time for this argument. Sure, it is easier to eat healthy if you are very affluent, and it is harder to eat healthy or to be active if you are very poor. I think that's true. But just because something is more difficult doesn't mean it's out of your control or impossible. And lots of poor and working class people go through their struggles and their difficult lives and their tight budgets without becoming morbidly obese. The biggest thing that contributes to a lot of these cases of morbid obesity is not even what they eat, it's just portion control or sedentary lifestyles, both of which walking is free. Cutting your portions down is free, even if you're eating frozen pizza. And also, it's nuanced, it's complicated, but I'm not sure I really agree with this notion that categorically healthy food is so expensive and unhealthy food is so cheap. You can get chicken breast and broccoli and a huge thing of brown rice to make healthy dinners, and it's not that pricey. Whereas constantly going out for fast food can certainly add up. I mean, I just am not sure I accept this premise, and regardless, I reject the notion that just because it's harder, it's therefore out of your control. That's simply not true. The comments section really pushed back on this notion as well. One person wrote, portion control is free, walking is free. You don't need to completely change your diet and get a gym membership to lose weight. I'm so tired of these misconceptions around weight loss. It doesn't need to be expensive or hard. Yes, particularly if you're not trying to cut down to 11% body fat, right? You're not trying to get super fit and slim. You're just trying to go from morbid obese to obese or just slightly above average or normal body weight. That really can be achieved without the expensive personal trainer, without the Whole Foods grocery runs. Just portion control and activity will help you get there. It really is. And that doesn't cost anything. Heck, it might save you money. Another person commented, people say that it's expensive to eat healthy, ... Medical bills and medications will be even more expensive. That is true, but part of the problem with our system of health insurance, which is just so incredibly broken and distorted, is that in many cases, you're not really paying. You're not the one paying for the consequences of your bad health decisions. It's kind of passed on to everyone. So some of the individual incentives there are more or less destroyed. And there are reasons for that that aren't entirely illegitimate, but the actual kind of direct dealing with the consequences of your actions is often reduced, although not entirely removed because of copays and deductibles and that kind of stuff and the way it works. But yeah, it's not as simple as other situations in life where you directly bear the consequences of your actions. Another person writes, frozen food doesn't have to be unhealthy. A big bag of frozen vegetables is cheaper in the longevity of vegetables, and it's still incredibly healthy. Preach. That is so true. It does not have to be unhealthy. Now, the most obnoxious clip of this entire debate, for me, came when one of the women suggested that being healthy requires privilege. Let's take a listen.
Food costs, like there's also privilege when it comes to like having time to cook stuff.
Definitely,
like if you work a
100%,
full-time job, if you have kids and stuff, a lot of the time it's just easier. You don't have the time and energy. Like I enjoy cooking, but it's a lot of work sometimes. And it's much easier for me to just like go through the drive-through. And then also privilege when it comes to like your mental health. When you are depressed, when you're struggling to even like get through the day, it can be really hard to have that motivation to eat well, to move your body and stuff. So for then when people are like, oh, well, why aren't you working out? It's like, dude, I can barely even get out of bed. So like, please stop.
Oh my gosh. Privilege has got to be one of the most overused words in all of the modern lexicon in 2024. It is so overused and it is so obnoxious. Somehow, all across the world, in countries much poorer or much more less affluent and prosperous than the United States, people of working and lower class manage to not be morbidly obese, even though they're actually much less privileged than even the poorest Americans here, who, on a global standard, have things pretty good. Not to denigrate their struggles, which are still real, but just in a broader perspective, even comparing them to the average lower class European citizen, I mean, they have a much higher standard of living. It's just a factual reality. And this idea that you just don't have time to cook, I mean, a lot of y'all are cooking unhealthy things, or the amount of time that it takes to go drive 10 minutes to some drive-through, pick up all the food, bring it all home and eat. I mean, you can make a healthy dinner in 20 or 30 minutes. I mean, maybe there are some people who truly have it so rough. They're working 70 hours a week. They cannot cook. They just have to get something quick in between their day job and their night job. But that's not most of the obese Americans. It's just not, okay? And you're just making excuses and deflecting from taking accountability for your own bad choices and actions, and that's not good. And as far as the mental health stuff is concerned, I mean, I'm compassionate for people struggling with mental health. I've been there in my own life, but you know what helps a lot? When you exercise, when you eat healthy. Those are some of the best statistically evidenced backed things you can do to improve your mental health. So at some point, I have to run out of sympathy when you have options of things you could do to make your mental health better, but you're not doing them citing your mental health. Like at some point, you have to take actions to improve your own situation and your own actions. And if you don't take any of those actions, but then cite the problem as the reason you can't take those actions, you're just in a doom loop of non-accountability, of denial, and of bad habits that unfortunately is going to take you to a dark place, most likely. It's just a matter of statistical fact, and I don't want that for you. But you have to want better for yourself. Ultimately, we can critique this stuff, we can offer alternatives, but nobody can change your life except for you. Now, I want to talk about one last clip from the debate where one of the women actually argued that the body positivity movement is a good thing and doesn't promote obesity. Let's take a listen.
I really hate the toxicity that has come from people being like, oh, body positivity promotes obesity and blah, blah, blah. I hate that so much. I think there is like the minutest people who are doing that. The vast, vast majority, I do not think promote obesity. Body positivity, to me, is just loving your body, accepting your body how it is, and not hating yourself. Like, you shouldn't have to wake up every day because you're 400 pounds and hate yourself. Like, you know, I don't think anybody should be hating themselves. So that, to me, is what body positivity is about. And it's also...
Okay, so first, as somebody who's covered body positivity, TikTok, and influencers at great length, I just totally disagree. Body positivity is very much about fat positivity and about fat liberation and about the healthy at any size nonsense. That might not be every influencer, but it sure is a heck of a lot of them.
Just a reminder that I am very fat and very sexy, and I am 100% glorifying obesity, and there's nothing you can do.
And secondly, what you're describing, people not hating their bodies, is important, but it's not body positivity. It's what I advocate for, which is something akin to body neutrality. I agree. You should not hate your body. You shouldn't beat yourself up endlessly. It's not productive. But we also don't actually want people to feel good about their body if they're 400 pounds. We want them to feel not self-hating and destructive and beating themselves up endlessly, both because that's not a good state of affairs for them to be in, but also because it's not the right mind space to make change. It will just push them deeper into their dark, self-destructive habits. But we don't want them to feel good about that fact, because then why would they change it? And it's something that's going to bring them to an early grave. So they need to change it. So I don't want people to feel positive about being 400 pounds. They should want to change that. They should feel a little negative about it because it's not good for them and it's not a good state of existence. But we should support body neutrality in terms of the way that others treat you. Nobody should shame you or make fun of your body or insult you. It's not kind, it's not compassionate, and it's not productive. But we should not, and in fact, it is dangerous, affirm people and tell them that their morbid obesity that's going to bring them into an early grave is beautiful, positive, and amazing, and they don't need to change anything. That is toxic, and it's why we have seen, as my friend Blair White has pointed out, many body positive or fat positive influencers die at early ages in absolutely tragic but likely preventable deaths.
Just because I'm fat, that doesn't invalidate the things that I say.
She died.
You ready to get supersized?
She died too.
Today I've got the big Fruit Loop.
He's dead.
Join me on my Fat Positive radio show,
which didn't last long because she died.
So no, body positivity is not actually good. It's a toxic, nonsensical ideological movement that frankly increasingly resembles a death cult. But that's just my take on the body positivity movement and this debate that Jubilee hosted more broadly. I'll link to the full debate in the description, and do let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. And now, I'll read a few of your comments from the last episode to round out today's show. One person writes, "Hey Brad, you should do a bit where you watch some of the nuts from the YEC and FE groups to get a break from the left's nut jobs." And I looked this up, and I think he means young earth creationists and flat earth groupers. So I'm not going to get into the young earth creationist stuff because I don't like to touch religion. That's just so far outside my area of expertise. Maybe flat earth, but it's kind of like, that's so delulu that I don't even know how to discuss it. I don't know. That one's not super interesting to me. It's just strange. Another person says, "Oh, I love that you're friends with Blair. She's awesome." Yeah, I give Blair a lot of credit because she kind of pioneered the space for right of center LGBT people to be on YouTube and on the internet and be outspoken. And that came with a lot of slings and arrows that she took. So I give her huge credit for that. And I think we don't agree on everything politically for sure, but I do give her a lot of credit for that. Another person writes, "It's interesting to me that Kamala Harris talks about how Trump tears people down and insults his opposition when the conversation should really be about raising people up and how to make things better. Then, in another clip, all she is doing is tearing down Trump and blaming him for the direction the country is going." Honestly, I'm just done with hearing all the hate and divisiveness from both sides of the political spectrum. Why is it so impossible for people to be civil, listen to understand, and come to a mutually agreed compromise on most things? It really never is black or white. Thanks for always trying to be center and a voice of reason. Yeah, Kamala definitely talks the talk, but does not walk the walk on those kinds of things. It's kind of like when Joe Biden said he was running to restore decency, and then when he got into office, that didn't last long with the way he was talking about Republicans. That's for sure to say. At least with Trump, he is nasty and insulting and ad hominem his opponents constantly, but he doesn't pretend to be nice or civil, I guess. I hate all of it. I think people should be respectful and courteous regardless. And so I try to stay out of that stuff myself personally. Another person says, "Brad, I was so hoping that you were going to talk about Kamala saying her economic plan has been vetted and experts saying it will be great for the economy. Can you please discuss that for us?" Yeah, I can talk about that briefly. First, some of the economists she's talking about or financial analysts have come out and said, "Stop, you're misleading the public. You're misstating our conclusions." So that's kind of embarrassing for her. And two, some of these economists that she likes to cite are incredibly partisan. So for a good example is the Nobel Prize winning economist Paul Krugman, who did good work about free trade back in the day that got him a Nobel Prize. But now if you read his columns, I mean, one, many of them are totally economically illiterate. This guy famously predicted that the internet wouldn't change America's economy. And two, it's just he's a full Democratic partisan. So she's often citing economists as if they're like these neutral, nonpartisan analysts, when in reality, and you have conservative economists who are very partisan on the Republican side as well, the ones she's citing are partisan types, not, objective analysts by and large. So that is a flawed narrative. But it is true that some of the economic analysis that's been done by the actual objective groups, like the Wharton School of Business, like the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, actually find that Trump's plans would add even more to the federal deficit than Kamala's. But that's not a compliment to Kamala because hers still adds trillions. They just say that Trump's is even worse because he's proposing all these tax cuts and all these carve-outs, but no spending decreases to counteract them. So he would blow a hole in the budget deficit. She would blow a slightly smaller hole, according to these analyses. But either way, we're fucked. So this is fine.
This is fine.
Another person writes, "I almost crashed my car listening to your impression of the 'Hi, everyone.'" Yeah, I do think that Josh person is a clown. Some people are like giving him props, like he epic trolled. And I'm like, no, he's just a cringe attention seeker who literally faked his own death for attention before. And this was just his latest grift to try to get attention. I mean, it was so obvious. It wasn't even good satire. The people giving him props or whatever, I'm like, why? I don't get it. Another person said, "I watch Brad for a more neutral take. I don't want to be in an echo chamber. I appreciate his even take on things." Thank you. That's exactly the right attitude to have. So thank you for being a part of my audience. And thank you to all of you who tune in every day. I love doing this show with you all. And I hope you all have a great weekend.